Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Kisses and Fairy Wishes crochet along. I'm so happy you joined us. We will start today with part 1, but first a few little notes. The way this one is set up is that a number of the testers from Hooked on Sunshine have contributed a section of stitch work to this blanket, but Vanessa also contributed one called Ivy's Lace. That's this section right here. This section called of Ivy's Lace we will repeat again at the very top of the blanket when we're finished and right before we put the border on. So we'll start part 1 with Ivy's Lace. There is also an intermediate section between all of them called Across the Miles. That's this bit in here. Now if you downloaded your prelude and you read it, it explains why it's called Across the Miles. But this serves as a divider between the different sections of stitch work. So we'll repeat these 5 rounds after every part before you start the next part. But don't worry, we'll prompt you each time. Now, in this pattern, the chain one used sometimes at the end of a row to turn with is not counted as a stitch. That applies pretty much across the board unless you're otherwise told. Other chains, like if you do 2 chains or 3 or 4, that usually does count as a stitch and it will be told in the pattern. You'll know what it signifies, but most of the time a chain one at the end is just a turn and doesn't count. The other note to remember is that you will sometimes be starting on the front side of the work and sometimes on the back of the work. So get yourself something. I've got a little piece of fabric here, yarn that I've used just to signify the front of my work. You can use a stitch marker, sometimes I use an earring, whatever, just to indicate to me which is the front side of my work so I don't get lost, especially in a pattern like this which is worked in rows. And when you work in rows, you work front to back to front to back, backwards and forwards. So you always need to be mindful of which side you're looking at. So a little marker will help you there. Now also this blanket, being in rows, has a very long starting chain. If you're making the full pattern, there's 216 stitches across. If in terms of single crochet, there will be 216. So your starting chain will be 217 chains because one extra chain there to turn with. I recommend you find yourself a bunch of stitch markers, whatever. If you may already have hundreds, if you're enough. I tend to use hairpins. I've got the brown ones that mark off every 10th stitch. My purple ones tend to mark off every 50th. My green ones mark off every 100th stitch. So 100, 200, 50, 150, etc. along the side. So first thing you need to do is figure out how big you want your blanket. This blanket has the beauty of being extendable. So you need a multiple of 12 plus 1 stitch extra for the initial turn. So go measure your beds, your divans, your sofas, whatever it is you're going to make this blanket for. Make some chains, measure 12 chains and see how far they go. And then you can do a rough calculation of how many repeats you're going to need. But it must be a multiple of 12 plus 1 for your starting chain. Alright, without further ado, let's get cracking. I will be using, as I generally do with these videos, all of my stash bits and pieces. So I've got a whole bunch of these beiges and whites and this is actually like a khaki color, but I've got various oddballs in different dye lots, sometimes even the same dye lots, but they look different. I don't know why, but I'm just going to use this as a bit of a stash buster. I've got lots of little bits and pieces lying around and that's what I'll be using. I will only make a sample size because I want this to be a table run. I have a very long 3-meter table, so let's see how far this gets me. I will work with 48 stitches, so I'll make an initial chain of 49. So let's pack all this away and get started. I have spoken quite a bit to start off, but we don't do terribly many blankets in rows, so I just needed to say a few things. Alright, back in a second, ready to start. Okay, to start I needed a slip knot on my hook, and then I need to make the requisite number of chains. Now I think I mentioned I was going to make a set of 48, so I need 49 chains. The pattern needs you to make a total of 217 chains. Now I've got an 8-ply cotton here. It's a DK cotton, it's quite dense, so we'll see how we go with that. Make sure your chain is not too tight, please. Just give it a bit of a tug every now and then, and make sure there's a little bit of stretch in it. You see how my chain stretches a little bit? You need that, otherwise it'll be too tight and the bottom won't look nice. Now, even though we are putting a border on our blanket, it will still pucker if it's too tight, irrespective of the border. So take the time now, slowly work your way down, stop every now and then and check. If it's really too tight, you might want to consider perhaps going up a hook size or half a hook size just for your chain. All right, get your chain done, whatever your stitch count is going to be, get it up to that number +1, and we'll be back soon to start row 1. Okay, so I've made my chain. I've stopped and checked regularly that it is still quite elastic. And now to start row 1, and this will be the right side of our blanket. We'll pop a stitch marker in a minute. First we need to make something. So the first thing we do is make 1 single crochet in the second chain from the hook. That's not a chain, that's just a loop from the last chain you made. So that's your first chain right there, and that's the second. So this is the turning chain we talked about. That's the extra chain we made so that we can turn with some height. And you just start making 1 single crochet into every chain down the line. Now you have to, if you're following the pattern, end up with 216 single crochet. In my sample, I will finish up with 48 single crochet. Now if you're a clever cookie and you know how to make a foundation single crochet start, good for you. You don't need to do this first row. You've already basically done it all in one with your chain. And we'll hook up with you for row 2. For the rest of us, we need to make our chain and our single crochet. And again, I counsel you to do a little bit of a stretch test to make sure that all is well. Your chain will twist a bit like this. That's not a problem. The problem is if you're putting your stitches in and the chain isn't coping and it's bunching up because it's too tight. That is the problem. This little twirl is not a problem. All right, so get yourself all the way down, start popping in those stitch markers if it'll help you to keep count. I would recommend that you do that. Get all the way to the other end and I'll meet you there to finish off the row and to chain and turn. See you in a bit. Okay, so I'm almost at the end. I've been very careful not to twist my chain as I work, so I've got a really beautiful straight line going down with my chain loops. And now I'm just going to finish up the last couple of stitches into the last one, and then I need to make my chain 1 to turn. That's what the instructions say, chain 1 and turn. Now I don't know which way you like to turn. I like to turn counterclockwise. I just personally feel that it gives me a neater edge, but that's entirely up to you. Alright, so let's just take a look at this chain of row 1. Please make sure you've got the correct stitch count. I keep stretching this thing. It's compulsive with me. I just have to be absolutely sure it's not going to curl up on me. So make sure you've got the correct stitch count. Make sure you've put 1 single crochet into every single stitch. If you've skipped one, you'll be able to see it. There'll be a gap. Make a chain 1 at the end, right there. And then turn, and we are ready for row 2, and I'll catch up with you then. We're up to row 2. So we've got a chain 1 there. I'll just turn. And the first instruction is 1 single crochet in the same stitch as this chain 1. That's this stitch. Now because we're working in rows, I need to give you quite a few lessons at the beginning, and I do apologize. Because we're working in rows, the location of our top loops changes when we turn around. So you'll notice here, when you make a stitch, your top loops are to the right if you're a right-handed crocheter. They will be to the left of the post if you're a left-handed crocheter. But when you turn, they flip. So here is the post, right there, but my stitches are to the left now on the backward run. and in reverse for the lefties, you will find now that your top loops are now sitting on the right side for you. You have to know that, and you have to remember that when you're working, because you would be used to working when you start your stitch work again going in the round. You just go in here to the right of the post, not on the backward run. On the backward run, we're going in to the left of the post for the right-handers. So here is my stitch work. There are my loops to the left, and I'm going to make a single crochet. Oops. And the row says 1 single crochet in every single one of your stitches, 250 more down the line for a total of 216. So here are my loops. If you're not sure, rotate it towards you so you can see where they are. You'll get the hang of it, don't worry. There they are. All the way down, single crochet, get those stitch markers out. I really counsel you to keep those stitch markers going, because if you start to lose stitches or gain stitches, the shape of your blanket will be wonky. Instead of being a straight line up the side, it will start to either pull out or pull in, if you, depending on whether you reduce or accidentally increase. So this is just another round of single crochet. That's the back of the work, and now I'm working another row of single crochet from the back. This is the final tip for this. This was the front of our work. Grab yourself a stitch marker that can stay in. You can use, if you've got any of those clippy stitch markers. I have one of these. Sometimes I use earrings, whatever, or pins, not bobby pins, safety pins, whatever, anything. This is the back side of the work. This is our second row. Just turn it over for a minute and attach one of these somewhere to the front of the work where it can stay. You can move it up as the blanket gets really big so you can see it more easily. You have to know the difference between the front of your blanket and the back of your blanket so you don't get into strife. You have to read every row and understand where it tells you to start. Every section might start in a different side, so be aware of that. Got my little marker in now so I know where the front of my work is at all times. Now all I've got to do is finish row 2, which is just single crochet all the way down. I promise I won't belabor the point too much as we go ahead, but just to get started and so we don't make any critical mistakes, I've just taken a bit of extra time. Alright, let's get your second row done and then we'll reconvene for row 3. The end of the second row you need to finish with a chain 2 after you've made your final single crochet. Chain 2 and turn, and remember which way to turn, but I'll show you again when we get there. I've reached the end and you have to be very mindful not to forget this final single crochet here. Rotate over so you can see it. That's my chain 1 here. This loop here is from the chain 1. This is my final stitch that I need to work into. We're not counting the chain 1s, remember? So there's my final stitch. And then you can use your stitch count, your markers to check that you have now still got 216 single crochet. And then at the end, as I said, we need a chain 2. And again, I'm going to rotate counterclockwise, keeping a yarn in front of me. Sorry about my stitch marker, it's going to make a lot of noise as it rattles about. And I'm ready to start row 3. Okay. So row 3 says your 2 chains count as the first double crochet, or if you like, and it's in the prelude, you can use a starting stitch, which is 2 stacked single crochet on top of each other. I haven't shown you how to do those because I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So there's the first double crochet. Then it says skip a stitch, which is this one here. Rotate it so you can see the loops of your next stitch. Okay. These loops are the first stitch. These loops are the second stitch, which we're skipping, and these are the loops that we need to go into. So it's 1, 2, 3 across. Okay. We're going to make a double crochet in the next stitch right there. So we have skipped one, you can see it right in between there. Then we're going to come back and make a double crochet in the skipped stitch, which is this one over here that we skipped. And now we have made our first double crochet, cross double crochet in fact. Let me just show you what it looks like. So that's the double crochet made by the chain 2. and that's my cross double crochet, which should look exactly the same both ways. Okay, right, so we continue on working cross doubles all the way down, and to do that you make a double crochet by skipping one and making a double crochet in the next space. Now this is where it gets tricky. That stitch has been used. If you're not sure, give it a bit of a pull. You'll see that the work is pulling that stitch. You need to skip the next one. Don't double up, or you're going to have too many stitches. One double crochet there and one coming back into the skipped stitch like that. Again, that stitch is used, skip that one and into this one, and then back to the skipped stitch for a cross double. Now you need to do that all the way down. If you're working to Vanessa's, the team's stitch count, you'll end up with 107 of these cross doubles, and you'll have a double crochet at the beginning, and we're going to make a double crochet at the end. So let me get to the other end and we'll finish it off together. So I'm at the end of my row 3. This is the start, that was my chain 2, and here are my cross doubles. I'm just stopping now to make sure that yours looks like this. I don't mind it twisting or curling a little bit from the bottom up, but if it is doing this, you're already in trouble. It shouldn't be pulling tight, but you also don't want it over wavy either. So tension is critical, and only you know what your tension's like, and only you can really control it and figure out what needs to happen. If it's too loose, it'll flare, it'll go bubbly. If it's too tight, it'll pull in. All right, but now's the time to check it all. So I've gone all the way down the line, I've come down to the other end over here, and I've done all of my cross doubles, and there's the last start of the cross double. That leaves me one final set of loops, which is exactly what I should have, and in that I'm going to put a double crochet, just like that. Let me just put this down. Now you are going to have little bubbles and wobbles along the sides. You're going to have to expect that. Let me get that properly in shot for you. When I pull this up for the next round, it will start to level out a little bit, but remember though, we're putting a border on and all of this will be masked. What you don't want though is to have great big, bumps along the side because your stitch work is too loose perhaps. All right, don't worry, we'll figure it out. Okay, that's the end of row 3. We've got a double crochet at each end, and you should have, for a full blanket according to Vanessa's measurements, 107 cross doubles. Right, the last thing we do, and remembering that the chain ones don't count, we do a chain 1 and we turn. This is the way I turn, remember that, to keep those extra lumps out of it. All right, so finish your cross doubles, get your last stitch in, and we'll continue with row 4. Row 4. Row 4 is again single crochet, nice and easy. You've made your chain 1, but we need a single crochet in that same stitch, and then a single crochet all the way down. The fabric in this blanket is going to be very sturdy, not gappy at hardly at all. It's going to be a really good heavy winter blanket if you're using 8 plies or the worsteds and up, the chunkies. If you're using lighter yarns, it's going to be just a glorious beautiful blanket. Won't be too heavy if you're using the lighter yarn. So that's all we're doing all the way down. Single crochet in every single stitch all the way down, realizing that your top loops now are on the opposite side of where you're expecting them to be. So don't miss any of them. Get confused, rotate a bit, look for your top loops and grab them. Okay, all the way down. When you get to the end, we're going to do something different. So I'll meet you there and we'll get finished with row 4. At the end of row 4, you have to make sure you get the second part of the cross double, okay, which is right there. You've got to make sure you put a single crochet in that, and then you have to remember that we made a chain 2 for our double crochet. Okay, so you have to put a single crochet in the top of that chain 2, which is right there. That's where people lose stitches. And so that's the final tip of the day, I suppose, where you can get yourself probably a smaller stitch marker than I'm about to use, and mark every final stitch. And especially when you're using chains, you need to mark the final stitches. So normally I would have had a stitch marker in there to remind me not to forget to do my chain stitch. Put a stitch in that chain. But I've done it now. There it is. Okay. Now the last instruction for row 4 is to make a chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay. And then we turn. That's the end of row 4. Alright, let's move on to row 5. Row 5 tells us that that chain 4 that we did I do a chain 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, counts as the first extended double crochet and a chain 1. That's what it represents. Now the next thing we're going to do is skip one stitch. So find it. So that chain belongs to the first stitch right there. So we're going to skip the next stitch, which is this one, and we're going to work into the following stitch. We're putting an extended puff stitch into the next stitch and a chain 1. Now, if you look at the prelude, the puff stitch has 9 loops, and an extended puff just is a little bit different. So let me just show you. Skip one, yarn over, pull up a loop into the next stitch 4 times. 2, 3 and 4, and that leaves you 9 loops on your hook, including that you've got the starting loop, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 8 plus 1 makes 9. Now normally for a puff we yarn over and we pull through everything. The extended puff we yarn over and we pull through only up to the last loop and hold. Then we yarn over and pull up a loop, pull through. But then we also want to make a chain 1. Pattern is telling you to make a chain 1 after that final yarn over, pull through 2. Now we're going to skip a stitch, which is this one here, and make another extended puff. So skip one, and over here yarn over, pull up a loop 4 times. That's 2, 3 and 4. Yarn over, pull through all but the last one, leaves you 2. Yarn over, pull through 2 and chain 1. Again, yarn over. We need to skip a stitch, pull up a loop from the next one once, yarn over, pull up a loop twice, yarn over, pull up a loop 3 times, and one more makes 4. Yarn over, pull through all except the last, pull through 2 at the end, and a chain 1. So what you're going to get is a nice spread of puff stitches. Okay, they should not pull. There should be enough space between them. Oops, the old stretch test. Okay, so that they sit comfortably apart. So you've got you do the final yarn over, pull through 2 at the end, but then you also do an extra chain 1. Don't forget those extra chain 1s. So you're going to do that all the way down. Skip a stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop 4 times. Once, twice, 3 and 4 times. Yarn over, pull through all but the last stitch. Yarn over, pull through the last 2 and chain 1. Move across, skip 1, start again. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Pull through all but 1. Yarn over, pull through the last 2 and chain 1. Right, I'll leave you to do those all the way down. If you're doing the full pattern, you should end up with 106 of these extended puffs. I know it looks a bit wonky at the moment, but it will settle. And we'll get to the other end and I'll finish off the side with you. You will go till you have 3 stitches remaining at the other end. So stop. Here they are. 1, 2, 3. You'll finish your last puff, extended puff stitch here, and then wait for me there, and then we'll finish these last 3 stitches. Okay, I'll be back soon. When you've reached the end of row 5, please check, make sure that your work is sitting nice and flat. It's not pulling, it's not tucked in like this because it's too tight, or it's not over wavy and rippling. Just get to the end. Now, we finished the last, repeat the last puff and the last chain 1, and we have 3 stitches remaining. So we're still going to skip the first one, the next one, And then we're going to make one extended double crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, which is the last 2 stitches. Okay, that was a single crochet in the previous round, and there are the top loops, and there's the chain on the side. We don't want that. So extended double crochet is yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 loop only for the extended double crochet, then yarn over and pull through 2 twice. So it gives you a slightly taller stitch to match the puff stitches. One more, yarn over, pull up a loop, go through the top loops of that very last stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through only 1, and then complete a normal double crochet. Yarn over, pull through 2 twice. And that is the end of row 5. In the main pattern you will have 106 extended puff stitches, and you will have 3 extended double crochet, because you only do 1 at the start that we did with the chains. We did 3 chains for the extended double plus the chain 1 for the gap. So there were 4 chains here. At the end we still have our chain 1 here, but we've actually got 2 extended double crochet at this end. Alright, and the last thing you do when you've finished row 5 is to make a chain 1 and turn like that. Okay, so row 6 now starts with a single crochet in the same stitch that you came up from the chain with, 1 single crochet in that space. Then it says 1 single crochet in the next stitch, which is the second extended double crochet here, 1 single crochet. And then all the way along you're just going to put 2 single crochet into every single chain 1 space. So it's starting right here. There's a chain space there, so that's where you start. Don't miss that one. Just 2 single crochet in each one. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, all the way down. 1 and 2. And when you get to the other end, you will put 2 single crochet in this space here, and you stop there and you wait for me, because this is the last chain 1 space. It says until you have 1 chain 1 space remaining, and remembering that chain 4, the 4th chain, represented the chain space here. So stop here with your 2 single crochet, and I'll join you here and we'll finish off the row. Here I am. I've completed all of my single crochet, 2 in every chain space, and I've reached the last one. We're only putting 1 single crochet into that final chain space, and then it says to put 1 single crochet into the 3rd chain. 1, 2 and 3. So you're putting a single crochet into this 3rd chain like that, and that squares off that 4th chain really nicely. Sorry, I have to keep moving. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to do is make a chain 2. 1, 2 and turn, and we are now ready for row 7. Okay, so see how you go with that. Stop and check. I've still got some really nice stretch in my fabric. It's sitting upright. There's no pulling, twisting, curling. It's just sitting nice and flat, but I am being very, very conscious of my tension here. All right, finish up and we'll reconvene for row 7. So for row 7, the chain 2 counts as the first double crochet. Okay, we're then going to skip a stitch, so rotate, that's the first one, that's the second one, that's the one we're skipping, and we're going to make cross doubles again. So a double crochet in the next stitch, then come back to the skipped stitch and make a completed cross double crochet. But your chain 2 here represents a double crochet. Your cross double starts over here. So we've already done one of those, so that's not hard. Checking that that's a used stitch, skip that one over here for the first. Oops, I've snagged something, haven't I? Ooh, try that again. First double crochet, cross over, second double crochet. Oops, having a bit of a fumble. Let's do that again. There we go. Used, skip, start here, all the way down. And if you recall what we did at the other end, you keep going, oops, all the way down, and you'll make your last cross double in these the second and third last stitches. It says you continue until you have one stitch remaining. That stitch is this single crochet that's sitting here. There's my chain, don't want that, I want the top loops of that single crochet, and you will put one double crochet in that stitch. I'll do it with you when we get there. Alright, catch up in a minute. So when I've finished all my cross doubles here, you should have 107 if you're following the pattern, leaving you one last stitch at the end, and you just put a double crochet into that final stitch like that. Then you just chain one and turn, and now we're ready for row 8. Take a moment, check your stitch count, make sure you've got all of your stitches, and get ready for the last row of this section, which is Ivy's lace. To finish off, we have our chain one. We're just going to put a single crochet in that same first stitch, and then a single crochet in every stitch down the line. So pull out those pins again, and let's make sure you end up with 216 single crochet down the line. Alright, all the way down. When you get to the end, don't miss the last one. Now when you get to the end, you're going to put a single crochet in the last two parts of that last cross double, and you do need to put a single crochet in the top of this turning chain 2. Remember how we turned here? So don't forget it. Please don't forget those turning chains. If you haven't put a stitch marker in it, go looking for it. Always check. Okay, so single crochet in there, and a single crochet in the top of the chain 2, the second chain of the chain 2. Now in this section, Vanessa is finishing off here, and we are fastening off and securing the ends. The next part is called Across the Miles, and that is actually a separate little video clip, because you're going to use that throughout. In between every section of stitch work that has been designed, there is that section called Across the Miles, so you can just flick back to that specific video. It's completely separate, it's only a short video to show you those few rows that are called Across the Miles. So get ready and load that video up before we hit part 2, okay? And I'll join you shortly.